Good evening, folks. Good evening, and welcome back to Fitness Focus with Chau. Happy New Year. We're in a brand new year, episode 7 of this season, and we're welcoming tonight elite national Olympic weightlifter Karin Singh. Karin, good night.
Good night and Happy New Year.
Happy New Year. How are you tonight, Karin?
I'm doing well, yeah, thank you. All's good.
Beautiful, beautiful. So, you your nickname, one might say, is Mighty Mouse because you're not exactly the tallest person, but you're pretty darn strong.
Small but mighty.
Would you say that like what's your mindset? What do you think got you into this, you know?
Into being small but mighty or into weightlifting as
Yes, into being
such?
as in what made you want to decide what made you decide you wanted to be as strong as you could be?
I stopped growing vertically when I was 14. So at that point, I had two options. It was be short and just small all around, or it was accept being short and just be the strongest small person I could possibly be. And like I just jumped into that with both feet.
Understood, understood. So your sport of choice was actually, is actually Olympic weightlifting. Now, a lot of people don't understand the difference between Olympic weightlifting and powerlifting. What is the difference?
Okay, so Olympic weightlifting is a sport that you'll see in the Summer Olympics. Every 4 years we see it, everyone follows it. And it is a sport comprised of two lifts that is the snatch and the clean and jerk. So the snatch takes the barbell from the floor to overhead in one smooth motion. The clean and jerk takes the bar from the floor to a front rack position, from the front rack to an overhead position. So both of those are lifts taking a barbell from the floor to overhead, as opposed to powerlifting, which is also a sport that involves barbells. However, the lifts are completely different. There, you're looking at competing with your bench press, your deadlift, and your back squats. So that's the primary difference there, is that it actually is competing with different lifts.
All right. So, well, for those who don't know what a front rack is, basically there are different positions that you can hold the barbell for doing a squat. The back squats, as Corinne mentioned, is put on your back, your upper back, your traps. The front squat is actually balanced on your shoulders. The front rack is basically using your arms or your hands to hold the position there. All right. Corinne, tell us how you actually got into Olympic weightlifting, as opposed to, say, powerlifting like so many other people do.
So I got my start in CrossFit at first, honestly. And in CrossFit, you actually do all of these different lifts. You do the lifts that you see in powerlifting, you do the lifts you see in Olympic weightlifting, and I enjoyed all of them. What really drew me into the weightlifting side of things is, I guess, I like to choose the things that are the most complicated in life. But honestly, I enjoyed the technical challenge that the snatch and the clean and jerk gave me. I enjoyed learning to be as technically proficient in them as I can be, and I'm still continuing to develop in that. It's something where I guess something that I really enjoy is it forces you to keep growing, not just in building strength, but also in uh, doing a lot of nitty gritty, like detailed work. Which, I mean, not to say that powerlifting does not have its share of details to put in. I like I said, I just chose the one that's exceptionally complicated because I find it fun.
Yeah, well, I personally, even as a trainer, when I train, I focus primarily on the powerlifting lifts as opposed to the Olympic lifts
Mhm.
because those are not only highly technical but require a great deal of mobility and stuff. So to me, I would say that Olympic lifts are the greater challenge, you know, for me personally.
What I would say is that for there's definitely a higher level of approachability for a greater number of people when it
Mhm.
comes to a back squat versus a snatch. In that somebody wanting to coach somebody into the basics of a back squat, you're able to kind of cover those with fewer technical points that you kind of have to drill in early on. Whereas with a snatch, you can give a bare bones kind of description, accepting that the person's first snatch is going to look pretty crazy. And when
Right.
you want to actually get that to develop into a more proficient lift, there's definitely a greater number of details that you have to really build in quite early on. So yeah, I do understand where you're coming from. It is a lot more technical to have to approach.
Yeah. So the thing is now, as you said, in CrossFit, you do all the Olympic lifts, right? Including, if I'm not mistaken, one that was removed from Olympic lifting competition, which is the clean and press. Correct?
Uh, so yes, in that the way that CrossFit ends up working, you can pretty much take all these different movements and mix and match them. So where Olympic weightlifting is competing very specifically in the snatch and then the clean and jerk, in a CrossFit WOD workout of the day, you could have, a clean or a power clean specifically. You could have a strict press, you could have a push press, you could have a push jerk, a split jerk. If you really wanted to, you could specify people have to do squat jerks. Not many coaches necessarily do that. So CrossFit has a lot more of that flexibility in terms of the gym that you're at. The head coach may decide, hey, our athletes here need to work a little bit more on their push press this cycle for a particular reason. Whereas you're never going to see a push press uh, accepted as a lift in an Olympic weightlifting competition because it's not a jerk.
Right, right. So the thing about it is that um, a lot of people say that CrossFit, one of the reasons CrossFit has gotten a lot of flack. I don't agree with all the flack because I think that it's mostly due to people not understanding CrossFit very well and looking at it from a strict powerlifting mindset, which is squat, bench press, and deadlift. But they say that the Olympic lifts in CrossFit are bad because Olympic lifts are meant to be done for a single rep, but in CrossFit you do it for a number of repetitions. I have my take on it and why it's not bad. What's your take on it?
So I would say that this is one where I would not say it's good or bad necessarily. Because could we look at Matt Fraser, Rich Froning, Sam Briggs, any of these monsters in CrossFit, look at them doing a WOD that has 60 total reps of clean and jerks and be like, this is categorically bad for them to do? It would be hard for us to argue that when they are able to do this, not just in a set amount of time, but arguably quite well. However, you may find in one gym doing CrossFit versus another, maybe a coach has put in something that only a small subset of their athletes are able to handle. This could happen. What you end up finding happens a lot is people will see individuals within the CrossFit space who perhaps are seeing a WOD they found online and go, hey, I want to try this because it looks really cool. Maybe their coach has not even had any input into this, and you therefore end up with things floating around on Instagram, on Facebook, on the general social sphere, where somebody is clearly not performing a lift with the technical prowess that you would want to see when approaching a WOD that has, like I said, maybe 60 clean and jerks at a heavy load. Now, as somebody that trains weightlifting specifically, I rarely see a CrossFitter who's going to do a snatch or a clean and jerk with the same level of proficiency as a weightlifter. That being said, that's not the point of CrossFit. CrossFit actually is not trying to achieve the same level of technical excellency as anybody specializing in one sport. A CrossFitter on a rowing machine is not going to do anywhere near the kind of numbers as somebody who is a rower. That's not what the sport is about. So I think what ends up happening is that people are trying to gauge CrossFit through the lens of how do I gauge somebody being good or bad in this specific sport that isn't CrossFit, which is pretty unfair. We see a lot of track and field athletes who use Olympic weightlifting in their training.
Mm-hmm.
Do they look as clean and put together as an Olympic weightlifter? Almost never, because that's not their sport. They are not going to spend 3 hours nonstop just doing clean pulls and cleans and whatever other accessories are on that day. They're going to have that weightlifting as part of their program while they focus on their primary sport.
Right.
But we're not going to look at somebody who's definitely going to run a 200-meter faster than I can and go, well, just because your lifts don't look like
Right.
mine, something's wrong.
Mm-hmm. Alexander Mall says it depends on what you're trying to achieve. She's right. There's no right or wrong. It's specific to the athlete's athletic needs. As long as it's safe, go forth. So my take on it is this: CrossFit as a system is what people criticize. I don't believe that CrossFit as a system is a bad thing. I think we always run into bad coaches, which is the same for any athletic discipline. We run into bad athletes, which is the same for any athletic discipline. But I think that the only thing is because CrossFit is about completing a certain type of workout in a certain time, you find that for more than a few people, ego sets in, and that's where injuries come in. You feel that you have to do it within this time, so you push yourself beyond what you know well you should, and sometimes you do that against the coach's advice and stuff. So I think it boils down basically to human error as opposed to a problem with the actual system.
I agree, and I mean, I am a CrossFit L2 trainer. That's going to expire this year, but at this point in time, I can still say that I am a CrossFit L2 trainer. So
Right.
CrossFit, what it's really looking to do, it's a system that is, looking at it is defining, fitness as work capacity measured across broad time and modal domains. It pretty much means try and be as good at as many different things as you can be with as many different time periods that you have to do it for.
Right.
So if we say, okay, let's take running, we want you to be as good as you possibly can be sprinting as you would be running a 5K.
Right.
Now, that doesn't mean you're going to have the fastest sprint time or the fastest 5K versus somebody that's training endurance and long distance specifically versus somebody that is a sprinter. You're not looking to top those charts.
Yeah.
The reasoning behind having this broad approach to fitness as per what CrossFit as a theory is supposed to do is so that your average person's health is going to achieve that longevity.
You can hit all 10 areas of fitness.
Exactly that.
As
Exactly
opposed to 3 or 4.
Mhm.
All right, we're going to take a short video interlude here. We're going to take a look at Karin doing her thing. All right. So that lift is what we were talking about. That's called the Snatch. Karin, can you remember what weight that was?
I can. That was 55 kilograms, which equates to about, let me see, about 121 pounds.
And that is just a little bit, I'm assuming, just a little bit below your body weight. So you basically.
No, that's more than my body weight. At the time I weighed 47 kilos, which equates to 103 pounds. So that's about 15 or 16 kilos pounds more than I weighed at the time.
So basically, you just yanked somebody bigger than you over your head.
Pretty much, yes.
This is why we prefer to stress the mighty when we're talking about mighty mouse. So that's a competition in 2019. How long have you actually been in the sport?
So I chose to specialize into weightlifting in 2017. So that's what now going into 5 years of having specialized in this sport, and that's after about 4-ish years of having done it in CrossFit.
Right. So how has your competition experience been? Like, how many competitions have you done? How have they impacted you? That kind of stuff.
So I've honestly only done a handful of competitions, and that's entirely because in the Caribbean region we really don't have that much activity in the sport to have a wide range of competitions going on regularly. Before COVID, we knew for sure that we would have one competition in Barbados in November on the 30th. That's their Independence Day, hosted by Hole in the Wall Gym. It is hands down like the weightlifting competition of the region. Aside from that competition, which I have attended twice, and I was supposed to go actually this month, it unfortunately got canceled because of COVID. And it would have been the first year it would have been recognized by the International Weightlifting Federation. So we're all very disappointed with it being canceled. Aside from that, I've done a handful of smaller competitions in London in the UK. That's actually one of that video you saw there was from the last competition I did in London. But yeah, honestly, like, because the sport, our first ever Olympic medal was in weightlifting. Not our first gold, our first medal. Rodney.
I've heard about that, and it's quite impressive.
And it's sad that people don't know the sport.
Yeah.
Our first Olympic medal, and people don't know what sport this is. We now have a handful of athletes who are beginning to develop it once again. Mm-hmm. We're, looking at actually getting a team together once again to send to competitions. But it is definitely, it's a grind. It's a lot of work for us right now to bring the sport back. So at that point, then hopefully we're going to see that competition is more available. We could actually start to host things locally. I don't have to hop on a plane every time I want to actually compete.
Right. Well, I think that because powerlifting, the weights look bigger and the guys grunt a little bit more. As a stronger sport. So I think people would tend a little bit more towards powerlifting because of the look of it. It's more glamorous, one may say. Personally, I actually completely respect Olympic weightlifting because I understand the technical difficulty required, and for me, honestly, again, as a trainer, this is why although I don't practice CrossFit, I would defend it. I believe in, and this is my own slogan, training for life. I believe that we are doing this to improve our quality of life, so something like Olympic lifting that I think engages the muscles in a much more complete way, in a larger range of motion, etc., etc. That is something that I respect a lot more than powerlifting, even though, as I said, for my own training, I only do for strength. I basically focus on powerlifting lifts,
I mean, if we're gauging how badass a sport looks based on how much noise people make, then you need to check out this Chinese weightlifter called Shi Zhiyong, who is very famous for literally screaming when he lifts. He is known for being the noise he makes. So, but honestly, like, I do fully agree in terms of the benefits of weightlifting for general health and longevity, because yes, there is a lot to do with your maintaining your mobility, your flexibility. You have a lot that you're training in terms of your balance, your power generation. Arguably, you're also working agility. There's a reason that weightlifters have to train our sprints just as much as we train our pulls.
Mm-hmm. So. All right. So we're going to take another video interlude here. Take a look at something a little bit more recent. All right. So that's a more recent training video. When was that?
I'm gonna say about 2 months ago.
Right. So this is the exact same lift that we saw in the competition. Can you tell us what the differences were? Weights, technique, that kind of stuff.
Oh, it's definitely a lot lighter. That's probably about how much was that? About, let's say, somewhere around the range of 40 kilos, give or take, something like that. So probably closer to a 105, 110 pounds, I guess.
Right.
Yes, 100 is somewhere in that range, 105-ish. But there were so many technical differences in those two videos there. I've changed a lot in terms of the way I pull. One of the things I remember, my coach always, is telling me, you're throwing your back. You're throwing your back. Stop throwing your back. And I'm just like, I'm convinced I'm using my legs. I'm like, I have no idea what you're talking about, coach. I swear I'm not throwing my back. But then when I look back at 2019 and I look at like now, it's like, okay, yeah, I can see a massive difference in how I actually drive, the actual engagement of my quads and hips to generate the power that I actually want to do to get that really satisfying hip contact with the bar. You'll notice a big difference between people who are kind of thrusting their hip forward and you're seeing this big kind of wave that the bar creates, because it's not a tight movement. There's not enough actual connectivity between what the legs are doing, the hips are doing, the lats are doing, through to the shoulders and everything, versus when you get that moment where everything just kind of comes together. And people, especially in CrossFit, always say, get that straight bar path, but it's not literally wanting to be straight. It gives that illusion that the bar moves very straight when it's actually a very small set of curves that are going back and forth. But when you have that kind of opposing motion of, hips are going to move forward at the same time you're dragging the bar back into you, it feels like poetry in motion, to be honest. It's very satisfying when you get that just right connection, and everything flows.
I must say that listening to you describe that just now is probably my favorite part of the interview so far. I enjoy the passion that you describe it with. There's the light in your eyes.
I really have to say, when it is that you're spending like literally hours just trying to get that one little piece to fit in, and
Mhm.
one day it just clicks, it is so gratifying. I've had months and months and months where, I get all these other little things to just kind of improve bit by bit by bit. And there's always that one cue that I'm getting, that one thing. And I'm just like, but I swear I'm doing it. I swear I don't understand what more I could possibly change. Then one day there's just that one like different way that it's described. And then you
Right.
just kind of, something feels a bit different. And the entire lift feels like buttery smooth. And you're just like, okay, all right, I get it now. I
I
get it now.
understand. I understand. So as we've moved on to training, um, you've actually spent time, as you said, in the UK and whatever. What would you say is the biggest difference in training abroad as opposed to training down here?
For me, for weightlifting specifically, I do have to say it makes a massive difference when you could be in a gym where other people are also focusing on weightlifting. Um, I imagine that powerlifters do understand where I'm coming from. Anybody who shares a training room with somebody who's also training their same sport and has that same focus, and even you could have a different coach, you could have a different style you're training, you could have a entirely different cycle that you're on, but because you are all in there and understanding, hey, we're here to get better at this sport. It has that sense of camaraderie that makes training flow with a bit, it's more fun. I train by myself most of the time, and so I'm able to just kind of put my head down and keep going, and I love the sport. That's why I do it. I enjoy the sport. So even training by myself, I'll get in, I'll do my session, but I'd be lying if I said that I didn't have more fun when it is that I'm surrounded by other people who are also, you know, grinding and suffering along with me.
I hear you. I hear you. And I assume that there's some level of cheering on when people hit a new PR or,
Mhm,
they're getting trouble with a particular lift and they just finally click and
mhm.
everybody in the room just applauds and stuff.
That is one thing I found different between the weightlifting gym, that particular gym that I went to, or well, the two that I went to in the UK, versus like being in CrossFit boxes down here. You may find that kind of moment where everyone in the box is kind of in the CrossFit box is there with you and kind of cheering you on and whatnot. However, a lot of the time it ends up being whoever you're training with, like kind of your immediate training buddies, your little circle, who are most likely going to be vocal in supporting you and whatnot. I clearly remember one of the kind of first weeks that I was training in London, and I spoke to people a little bit, but I wasn't really close to anyone, and I'm just in my own little world doing my lifts, and it's getting to a heavy kind of grindy squat, and I'm just doing it, and next thing I know, everyone in the gym is literally cheering me on. And I'm just like, when did y'all start paying attention to me? But that's just the kind of environment that it is that you're doing what you're doing, but it's almost like we just have this awareness. Okay, that person's doing some back squats, that person's doing some front squats, that one's training some snatch pulls. And because we're also in tune with what the work is that we're doing, even if we're on completely different programs, as I said, we're very present with one another. So it felt really much, it felt like, hey, we're all in this together.
You're making me want to become an Olympic weightlifter now.
It's fun. It's fun. It's a lot of work and it's fun.
Maybe one day. Maybe one day. I'll hire Karin Singh as my coach.
Well, I mean,
Let's take another break where we are going to go into an advertisement now. All right. Something that you're familiar with.
My name is Shazelle Fleming.
Hi, my name is Alan Ferreira.
Hi, my name is Jamie Phillips.
My name is Daniela Maria Taruba.
My name is Mark Chau.
Hi, my name is Charlene Prokop.
My name is Karin Singh.
My name is Sienna Andrews.
My name is Tiana Guy.
Hi, my name is Nikki.
Hi, my name is Kevin Lucas.
My name is April Suraj.
I'm a chef by profession.
Some would call me a gym rat.
I'm a fitness instructor.
And I am a powerlifter.
I am a mom, a wife.
I'm a fitness enthusiast.
I also do capoeira.
I'm an elite international boxer for Trinidad and Tobago.
Doing acting, modeling, MMA, martial arts, stunt choreography.
I ride horses.
I am a Spanish teacher and also a rugby player.
I'm an Olympic weightlifter for Trinidad and Tobago.
I'm also a bikini fitness athlete for Trinidad and Tobago.
Look you.
Like me.
All right.
I have different hair.
Different hair, yes. For those who don't know, and I plug it every episode, and I'm going to plug it again. That is the Hybrid Caribbean's body issue. We did it because we have a problem with body shaming. We have a problem with making people feel like less than they are because of how they look. And that's something that we don't like. So we decided to tackle it by getting a bunch of athletes to pose for us. As you saw, I was there, but I didn't quite have, the crazes yet. And Karin volunteered to be a part of the project also, because also, as we've spoken very briefly about her height, but you notice it's something I didn't dwell on because that's another area that people tend to find to tease people about, So, Karin, what really prompted you to be part of, since we have an actual model here, what really prompted you to be part of the body issue?
So I do genuinely and generally feel that discussions about our body sensitivities, our self-esteem, really, we all experience it, and I think it's important for us to be able to discuss it. And a lot of people look at social media, they look at our Instagram feeds, people who are lifting, people who are perhaps what they consider body goals, and they're just like, oh, that person must feel so good. It's like, okay, well, yes, no, maybe, who knows? But we also are human and definitely have experienced, maybe still do experience our fair share of body shaming, or people, whether intentionally or not, making us feel less than or bad about, who we are, how we look, things that, that whole thing. Don't tell somebody something if they can't change it in 5 minutes. Yeah, I can't change how tall I am. I've had people meet me and the first thing they say is, wow, you're so short. It's like, thanks. I wasn't aware. I've lived my whole life not knowing how short I am. I'm so glad that you told me. And we definitely are seeing a shift in society, I think, towards people coming forth, speaking more openly about, various topics, a lot of things to do with our emotional well-being, our mental health, of which, body shaming does have an impact on both of those. It plays a role in our own self-image and our self-esteem. We hear a lot about people who may look a certain way or fit within certain categories, let's say, of descriptors, who would come forth and speak about, here are the things that people say that make me feel bad. And I don't think that it needs to be, we only, recognize that certain people are going to feel bad if somebody makes an untoward comment. It's kind of like, we're all human. So all of us have at some point experienced people directing some kind of comment towards how we look, our bodies. we all should be able to discuss this and also work towards not having this be so commonplace, quite frankly.
Yeah. There's something you said in the middle there that's exactly why I did it, because you said, you look at people on social media and stuff, but you don't know what they're really going through. At the end of the day, people tease you about your height. People, I have literally had women tell me, Mark, you're not sexy because you're too muscular. And my whole thing is, okay, I may not be your preference, but why do you feel the need? Why do you feel the need to try to bring me down? As I say, I have a broad back. I can take it. It doesn't bother me. But just because somebody doesn't offend me doesn't mean I don't recognize the intent to offend.
Mm-hmm.
Why does it have to come to that? Why does it? So even us, we who are in training, we who are athletes, we who are whatever and whatever, why we face it also. We have a couple of mothers. There's one woman, one brave woman, April Surratt, I have to call her name, who did a shoot while pregnant and did a second shoot after she delivered her baby. Because, when a woman is pregnant, she's fat. And then afterwards, her boobs are sagging and she has stretch marks and stretch marks of this, that. And all the comments never cease. And I think that we need to stand up and say that's not okay. That's absolutely not okay.
And I think that it's also another aspect that definitely needs to be addressed. Is there's this idea some people have that just because somebody puts something of themselves out on social media, it automatically means that every comment that somebody makes has to be accepted. Like, yes, I'm putting, let's say, an image of my body or a video of this body doing something onto the public sphere. That doesn't mean I have to be okay with somebody coming and making a derogatory comment, whether they think, whatever their intention is behind it. The idea that, well, you're putting this out there, therefore I have a right to comment on it, is like, I mean, sure, but well, where are you coming from? Really thinking? Do you think that you're standing on solid ground here, being derogatory towards somebody else? Like, well, what's the purpose here?
Exactly. So now this is where the shameless plugs reached a total a total height. Ladies and gentlemen, presenting the Hybrid Body magazine. Of course, that's Jamie Lee Phillips. You saw her in the video just now. It is out. It is ready for purchase. It is $200 TT or 30. And we're going to take a quick sneak peek at our guest for the night. I wouldn't leave it open for too long, because you're going to need to purchase the magazine to get a closer look at these pictures, to see what our athletes say, because everybody has something to say. I am in here too, as you know. And, we're going to really tackle this body shaming thing. Remember, you can contact us at Hybrid. That's me. That's anybody you know at Hybrid. You can contact the athletes themselves. So you can ask Karin how to purchase a magazine. All right. And get your copy. It's a collector's edition. This is the only thing for the year that we're printing anyway. So other than that, we're all online. All right.
Exciting.
So next question, back to our main purpose here, the interview. So COVID-19. As you mentioned, it completely derailed a major regional competition that would have been recognized by the international governing body and stuff. And I know, as someone who has also been through, as the rest of the 7.3 billion people on the world, we've all been through this. We've all experienced cancellation, disappointment, etc., etc. And I know that it's really, really hard to stay focused. So how did you do it? How did you stay on track and remain competitive? And how?
So I did joke at the beginning of the pandemic that I've apparently been subconsciously been preparing myself for COVID for the last few years, because I actually set up my platforms in my home gym pretty much shortly after I started focusing on weightlifting since 2017, really, and well, 2017 going into 2018 is when I got those platforms put in. So when gyms and everything closed, I already had my training space set up to continue lifting. Unfortunately, an old shoulder injury decided to act up shortly after, and then I'm there along with everyone else, not really training as much. So I will say that honestly, the fact that I train by myself, whether or not COVID is a factor, I wouldn't say made it easier, but allowed me to more easily keep myself on track. Versus if I had gone from, that state where I had group around me all the time, that gym hype, that camaraderie really keeping me going, then that would have definitely been a harder transition into having to train by myself at home. But to know that I was going from already training by myself to kind of being like, all right, well, now I'm training by myself and I just can't see anybody else. It was more just, all right, well, get in the gym. At that point, the fact that I have a bit of an obsessive personality probably helped, because for me, it's like, all right, I've got my program. Day 1, I got to go do it. Let's go. Day 2, I got to go do it. Let's go. Okay, these are my 2 rest days. That's going to be rest time. And I kind of keep myself on track just because there's that thing in my brain going, today isn't a rest day. I need to go and do something. And injury is pretty much the only thing that will stop me from obsessively continuing.
So basically, one of the biggest things that helps you is having a schedule and a plan.
Oh, for sure. One of the things I always encourage people to do is write down your workout. So even if it is that you are following a program that somebody has set, or you're pulling workouts from online or whatever it is, sure, you might say, okay, well, here on my phone, I've got a picture of what I'm doing today. But I find that whether you record it on your phone or if you write it down in a book, for me, I actually have my training notebooks right here. I can show you. The act of writing down the numbers that I do not only helps me to, keep track of how my progress is looking, but it helps me mentally to know, okay, well, this is what my workout schedule looks like for this week, for this month, whatever the case may be. It's extraordinarily powerful in keeping me getting into the gym and doing what I need to do.
Right.
This was my main notebook from London. As you can see, I like to put a lot of decorations all over it because it's fun. And I actually also completely write down a lot in terms of deconstructing my thought process going into or having done a competition. So this is about 11 pages, I think, of just talking about a particular competition, what it was like going into my prep, what it was like going into that morning period, the weigh-in, all of that. And this is an idea of what my weekly, this is like one day, this is another day. I tend to have the same kind of program week to week. So I'll actually put, this is like week 1, week 2, week 3. Therefore, I can very easily look at, okay, what are my numbers looking like at the end of this cycle versus the beginning of it without having to flip through a bunch of pages. So these are all tools that help me keep track of what I'm doing and also motivate myself to keep pushing.
So basically, you're not only journaling your workout, you're just journaling your process in general.
Very much so, because there's a lot that you lose in what you remember of a competition, because there's so much just going on emotionally in terms of your hormones, your adrenaline, everything that's happening on that day. You will remember bits of it much more clearly than others, but in that kind of like 12-hour period immediately after, I'm able to say, this is what I felt like when I woke up. This is how it compares to the last time that I approached a competition, or this is how it compared to the last week that I've been training. There's one competition I remember, in fact, it was that same one that you showed a snatch from in London, where I was convinced I was going to be lifting with the first group, as in the people who were, lifting a bit lighter weights versus the second group, which were athletes using this as a qualifier for British nationals. And when they called the athletes' names, so the first group, I'm sitting there and I'm like, they didn't call my name. What happened? They forgot about me. So they start calling the second group and they called my name. And all at once, I had to face an entirely different mental game for me of I'm not competing directly in a session with other people who are, what I would consider closer to my level of competition. I'm going to be directly in a session competing with people who are looking to represent Great Britain. So how do you suddenly, in the span of pretty much an hour, stop and go, I need to not freak out too much now because suddenly I'm playing with the big boys, and writing that down and kind of processing through writing what that hour felt like for me to bring myself back into, okay, it's, it's the same lifts, I'm still same game plan, all of that. That is the reason it's still as clear in my brain now as the day it happened.
Right. How did you do in that competition, by the way, if you don't mind my asking?
I actually have to say my friend had to laugh because at the end of it all, I went and I looked at the score, the leaderboard, and I'm seeing, okay, they've put 2 columns for first, second, third, and it's primarily looking at the people going for nationals. And okay, yeah, that leaderboard looks the way I expected it to look. Okay, cool. And then I see, okay, they've got a bunch of other names, and suddenly this other column and my name go across. I'm like, there's a 1, and I'm just standing there, and I'm like, what does this 1 mean? And she's like, you won from everybody that's not competing for nationals. And I'm like, I won? I literally, that's exactly what I did. I just stood there and I went, I won? Because I kind of expected to be, either third or just outside top 3 based on the people that I knew were competing. So to go in and realize that I'd hit lifts sufficiently, that one was not scored off of your total. So it wasn't just I lifted 121 kilos, ergo somebody who lifted 120 kilos automatically scored less than me. It was using your I just had the word and now I've lost it. The scale where it compares it to your body weight. I literally just had it. Just forgotten it. But pretty much I lifted sufficiently higher numbers compared to my body weight to be able to score high.
Nice.
So
before we move on, there are 2 things. One of our viewers, Tiffany, she said, basically she wanted to thank you for the journaling tip. And we got a question from my mom. Hi, Mom. What is your diet look
like? So when I'm not competing or when I'm not preparing for competition, I don't tend to be overly strict with how I eat, to be honest. The main thing I have to keep on top of is making sure that I get sufficient protein for my actual recovery and trying to kind of make sure that I just keep my macros very vaguely balanced, try not to overdo it too much. But I tend to naturally sit just about 2 or 3 kilos above my competition weight. So I don't tend to have a tough cut when I'm having to go into competition. When it comes to competition time, I'll pretty much do 12 weeks where I am more categorically approaching, okay, this is what my protein macros are for today. This is my carbohydrates, this is my fats. And I'll usually use an app to just kind of track, okay, this is what my meal breakdown needs to be, especially in terms of, okay, this is how much I should eat before I train, this is how much I should eat after I train. In general, I tend to take the approach of everything in moderation. So I'm not going to be like, well, because I know that ice cream is not the most nutritionally beneficial thing, I'm never going to eat ice cream. Even if I'm on a cut, I will have a time where I'm just like, you know what, I really want ice cream, and I recognize it's not going to be the most, nutritionally valuable carbohydrate to have. But if I adjust my day like this, I could have a little bit of ice cream and enjoy myself and not, I try to maintain a healthy relationship with food. That's what I really try to do.
Besides, you can't trust anybody who doesn't eat ice cream.
Well, I agree. I agree.
All right, we're going to take a look at 2 videos back to back. All right.
Cool.
All right. So, I really enjoy those two videos for a couple of reasons. The first one is a general thing, and the second one is a more specific thing. So, a lot of people believe that when you are training to be competitive in a particular sport, what you really need to do is practice the sport, which is true. But there you are doing regular, everyday back squats as part of your training regimen because, when you're training for a sport, well, I'll let you explain it. Why were you doing back squats, even though you're Olympic weightlifter and you don't compete doing back squats?
Well, first things first, I will say to anyone who thinks that the way to get better at snatches is just keep on doing more snatches. Unfortunately, it doesn't work that way. The majority of my training looks extraordinarily boring. It's a set of different pulls. I could have a pull from the floor to my knee, to below my knee, to above my knee, from below my knee to my hip, from my hip to the high pull. I could just do like a whole set of just high pulls with, just endlessly pulls. And then I could look at pulls with a deficit. It looks extraordinarily boring. The amount of time I spend actually doing snatches is tiny. Like this is snatches. God, where's my camera? This is snatches, and like this is pulls, pretty much.
Basically, the doing these snatches is like just the icing on the cake, where you pull everything together.
Pretty much.
To show yourself what you've done over the last hour.
It's that whole, well, funny enough is that you tend to start with the main lift. So my first thing will be do the snatches and then do everything that'll make the snatches better. Okay. But because they are so technical, if you spend the time fatiguing yourself doing the pulls, then try to snatch, you're going to have a really tough time pretty much. As for why it is that I'm doing back squats, so you have multiple reasons to do things like pulls and squats and presses. I mean, we don't really do a lot of bench in weightlifting, but yeah, there are times that I'll have bench programmed in. And the reasons are you do need to actually develop strength. To be able to do a heavier snatch, you need to improve your strength. However, anyone who watches me do a back squat and then compares it to somebody who's, doing powerlifting, for example, they're going to look different. And that is because, yes, I am looking to continue developing my strength through my back squat, but my back squat has to have a direct feed into my snatch. So the way I position myself, the way I move in a back squat has to look like and has to feel like the way I will move doing my snatch pulls. So having a really heavy squat that looks completely different to my snatch is not going to be very beneficial to me. However, expecting myself to develop a stronger snatch and never doing a squat is like madness.
I completely understand. And actually, the first set of stuff you said about the pulls, that's why I wanted to show the second video. Basically, what you're doing is a kind of a jerk into an overhead squat, because the final part of a snatch is a very deep overhead squat, So this is where, to me, the technical proficiency comes in, as opposed to just being strong and throwing weights up in the air,
Yeah, so that movement is called a snatch balance. So as you can imagine from his name, it has a lot to do with also teaching you the balance in receiving your snatch. So you're developing quite a few different things there. You are developing that balance in receiving, you're developing your positioning and your strength in receiving. You're also developing that explosiveness that you need in your snatch, your clean, and your jerk. All three of those movements are extraordinarily explosive, and the way that you want to load up into both a snatch balance and a jerk is pretty much like same, but a little bit different. Very small details in the exact positioning, but the kind of broad spectrum of what it is that you're looking to do, they hit the same notes.
Okay. Well, we have one more question, and I think this is probably one of the biggest questions to me. Going through this sport, going through any sport, and I must say it, and I hate to say it, but I must say it, especially in Trinidad and Tobago, unless you're playing football, and even that has its own set, but or sprinting, unless you're playing football or sprinting, and even those have their own set of issues. But in any sport, I find that people who are competitive even when you're competing for the country, face their own set of challenges. What would you say are some of the challenges you have faced in getting to where you are, and what do you see moving forward there? Can you overcome the challenges? Have you overcome the challenges? Do you see more challenges coming up in the future?
So I would say that I've faced challenges in terms of both like my own body in terms of I've experienced a fair number of injuries, which unfortunately mostly have come from not really having established a strong enough foundation when I was in the CrossFit world. There was, a lot of trying to play catch up in effect because of how broad CrossFit really is. So I ended up in a situation where a lot of my larger muscle groups developed very quickly, and I didn't do enough work to make sure that the connective tissue and smaller muscle groups were developing at a similar enough rate to avoid having those be what failed. And ultimately, I have had a handful of injuries that range from being very minor to a bit more serious that have created setbacks in my training in Olympic weightlifting. So that's one side of things. In terms of how I see that moving forward, at the end of the day, I know that it's a bit of a kind of hard slog going through recovery. That's always going to be the case. But once it is that, I just stick with it, be patient, and don't try to rush myself into lifting heavy again when it is that I am allowed to lift heavy again, then it will be, it will progress and it'll be fine. At the end of the day, injuries or no, I'm a better weightlifter today than I was when I first started, than I was in 2019, stronger today than, any of those other periods that I could compare to. And in terms of the sport, there are other challenges there as well. The administration of the sport in the country in Trinidad and Tobago has only just actually settled a lot of internal challenges that it had been facing. So we now are in a position where we can send athletes to international competitions and represent Trinidad officially, as opposed to go to competitions as individuals, knowing, we are Trinbagonians and we are here representing our flag, but it's on an individual level versus actually having the association behind us. Now we are in a position where the association is able to be behind the athletes. And it's taken a long time to get here. So I'm much more optimistic, and I'm very much looking forward to seeing where the sport develops and grows now that we actually have an operational administrative body. Now, I will say one more thing, which is massive. Internationally, weightlifting is in a problematic position. We've had a lot of samples of athletes from Olympics dating back from 2008 forward. They did a lot of back testing, medals stripped left, right, and center, countries banned because of doping cases coming up, and we're being told that unless things change, we're not going to be in the 2028 Olympics. And that's a tough position to be in. It's one of those where it's already tough as a small nation trying to get to Olympics in a sport that doesn't have a quota set to us. USA, China, well, no longer Russia, they're banned, but like a lot of these nations that are active in the sport, they have their quotas for athletes that are going to be sent to Olympics. A friend of mine, actually, a Singaporean athlete who has gone to Worlds representing Singapore twice, and I look up to him so much. His journey, I'd say, is very reflective of where it is I see myself wanting to go, needing to go, and he's just been able to get that couple of steps further because of having started when he started, having the support and the growth that he's had. And he has recently made the decision to retire from the sport. And it's almost like personally painful to see that. I understand it. I respect it. I'm going to miss him. I'm going to miss seeing him compete because he's been a massive inspiration for me as somebody in a similar position in a small nation that doesn't have that much support, from government come down, from the country in general. And, it's a tough one. You kind of have to just keep pushing forward, knowing that you're doing this because you have that drive, you have that dream, you have that passion, and you have that goal.
Mm-hmm. Well, hopefully you can take over from him and you can be an inspiration to someone else.
I'd like to think I can. I'd like to see that happen.
All right, so that pretty much brings us to the end of the interview, except for one little thing. We're going into our final segment, which we affectionately call the last rep. It's 10 quick questions, where we get to know you a little bit better aside from the interview questions. So, off the top of your head, right? Ready?
Okay. Ready.
All right. What's your favorite junk food?
Chicken nuggets.
like, like you weren't prepared there. Just take a deep breath.
No, I had like several come to mind. I was like, which one would I really choose? It's chicken nuggets, I have to say.
So squats or deadlifts?
Squats.
Legs or chest?
Legs.
That is the right answer. So if you had, if you were like down in the dumps and you had to go to choose one exercise that will help to lift your mood, what would be your go-to exercise?
Snatches.
If there was one person in the world you could choose either a trainer or a workout partner, who would your fantasy workout partner or trainer be?
Okay, so I have to say, it's not a fantasy. It's literally my workout partner from London because I miss her. She is the absolute biggest joy to train with. Her name's Jessica. I absolutely love her, and I miss her. And I wouldn't choose anybody else. I would 100% just want her to train me.
Understood. What's your favorite workout music?
Oh God, I have such an eclectic playlist. I will say my go-to when I really want to have some bangers, it's either going to be Panic at the Disco or it's going to very specifically be DJ Ifixa's dubstep remix of Ocarina of Time music.
Now, here's the thing, right? You see that Ocarina of Time music? That is some very, very wonderful music. So, you're going to have to give me that DJ name after, right?
It's a pretty epic set of remixes.
10 points to Zelda.
Definitely.
Cardio or weights?
Weights. Yeah, come on.
I mean, yeah. And the next question is going to be all obvious also. Favorite sport to play?
Weightlifting. It is. Although I will say gymnastics is actually a close second.
Okay.
I really loved doing the gymnastic training in CrossFit. It was a lot of fun.
So you can do backflips?
I cannot. Flipping is one thing I really wanted to learn, but in terms of the very what gymnasts consider the very basic skills, like I achieved a muscle up, I achieved getting a little bit better into handstand, things like that, like extraordinarily basic stuff. But I love, again, technically difficult.
Well, here's the good news. Research has shown that deep squats actually have a direct translation into jumping efficiency and jumping strength.
Mm-hmm.
So that also means that doing the backflip is just about spinning while you're up there, because you definitely have the strength to get up to the right height.
I think that my biggest problem is definitely my own fear of falling, because I definitely kind of go and I'm like, that's definitely what my holdback is being afraid of hurting myself.
I could talk to you about that. There are ways to train it that you won't fall,
All right. Well, we'll work on that.
We'll work on that. Next question. Protein supplements or diet?
Diet.
And the last question, perhaps the most important of them all. Are you ready for it?
Always.
You sure?
Always.
The most important question, right? TV or cinema?
TV. Actually,
you weren't ready.
No. Actually, the thing is, the cop out is because the answer is actually YouTube. Yeah. I legitimately barely watch TV. I'll go to cinema, with my boyfriend or friends and whatnot. But if given the opportunity to just choose media for myself, I will just watch Let's Play videos on YouTube.
Well, thank you for being a good sport. Thank you for letting us get to know you a little bit better, Karin. Thank you for the entire interview. It was a wonderful interview, and I had a wonderful time talking to you. I definitely learned some things here.
Thank you for having me. Thanks to everybody who's been watching. I'm hoping everyone's having a good evening.
Yes. I believe that we were able to start off 2022 with a bang. We'd like to thank again Karin Singh, and we'd like to thank all of our viewers who tuned in, who asked questions, who left comments, who even said hi. Don't worry, I saw it. Happy New Year to you all. And don't forget to check out the hybrid magazine, Body Issue, Hybrid Caribbean Body Issue. It's $200 TT or $30 US. You can contact any of us. You can contact any of the athletes or models who took part in the project to get your copy as soon as possible. We officially go on sale from Monday, but don't worry, you can contact us now to get your copy. All right? Thanks for joining. See you next week when we interview former national triathlete and current race manager, race organizer, Jason Gooding. See you next week.